Zimbabwe now, where the Zimbabwe Elections Commission, or ZEC, have said that there's been no rigging of the country's election. And this after opposition party, the MDC Alliance, alleged that the vote process was flawed. Now, the results race between ZANU-PF and the MDC Alliance continues. And to talk more about this and the election trends overall during the Zimbabwe election, we are crossing over now live to Harare to our news anchor, Peter Ndoro, who is there with a guest to help him unpack that. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Sakina. We're at the center of Harare, the city center, and it's an early morning, and most people are busy doing their usual routines of getting to work, and it's very difficult as you look around to get a sense that people are waiting anxiously for results. But I am sure that inside they're just wondering who is going to be the governing party and who's going to be their next president. Well, the results, as you've been reporting, have been trickling in overnight, and ZANU-PF has taken an early lead. The Herald newspaper itself, the state-owned newspaper, is predicting a landslide victory. Now, being the state-owned newspaper, one can only imagine that they probably know things that other people don't know. By about midnight last night, we believe that the 108 seats had been declared. ZANU-PF 102, MDC Alliance 73, and National Patriotic Front having 1 seat. But it's still a long day to go, and we'll be bringing those results as we go along. A lot of people have been watching this particular election, and one of them is Cheryl Hendricks, who's Executive Director at the Africa Institute of South Africa. Thanks very much for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Good to be here with you.
All right, so you've been here a while now. What's been your observations about the election and the results that have started to trickle through?
I think that this has been a historic election, as everybody else is saying. Historic not only because the two people that we usually see on the ballots are not there, but because it has been a peaceful election to date. We have not seen the kind of orchestrated violence characteristic of other elections in the past. We also have a number of international observers here, which is a first, and they also seem to be pronouncing that it is a peaceful election to date. The results are trickling in. There's a bit of tension around because political presidential candidates are already claiming an early victory. I think it's too early to tell. It's a very close call, as we all know. The results coming in from the parliamentary elections is showing an early lead for ZANU-PF with 73% of the seats, as we just heard, and 28% for MDC Alliance. But that is predominantly the rural vote coming in, and we know that ZANU-PF takes the rural vote. It would have been surprising if MDC took the rural vote. But once that urban vote comes in, we will see a shift. So it is too close to call. It's going to be a tight race here. We might see a scenario where ZANU-PF takes the parliamentary seats, the General Assembly, and we have an MDC presidential, a president. So it's too early to call right now. We'll know by the end of today what the General Assembly will look like, I think.
Why do you think the rural vote has gone the way of ZANU-PF? You know, people have said in the past it's because they've been intimidated and forced to. But if it's been as peaceful as they suggest, then what is it telling us? That this is what they want, but why?
But ZANU-PF has always been more organized in the rural area. MDC it would have been more open for them to go into the rural area, but within a space of 6 months, it will be hard to turn those voters. They will get some of the vote, but not the majority of it. Given the kind of agricultural programs within the rural areas, that would also sway them. We don't see as much intimidation coming from the rural areas anymore, but people vote historically as well. So for Zimbabwe, it has traditionally been urban areas go MDC, rural areas, which are the majority of constituencies, go ZANU-PF. And so we still see that trend emerging here.
Is the presidential election likely to follow a similar pattern to the National Assembly, or could we have that odd situation where you have a minority party with a president and the other party having the majority in parliament?
We could very well see a situation where we have Chamisa as president and a ZANU-PF dominant General Assembly. That will make for very interesting politics because they will then be forced to work together. They're both promising transformation in New Zimbabwe. This will force them to work together to achieve that agenda as well.
Now in South Africa we've been talking about having the opportunity to vote for individual MPs. This is what they do in this country, but the independents have done really badly in real terms, and that suggests people are voting party lines as opposed to for individuals.
Yes, people are still predominantly voting along party lines because these are the two main political parties that have been in contest since the year 2000 already. So it is a contest between the two big parties. There are 22 parties contesting these elections. We don't even hear about the other parties. I think NPF won one constituency so far.
All right. So women, another issue. It's Women's Month starting today in South Africa, and they didn't do well at all. I guess patriarchy continues.
So firstly, happy Women's Month for South African women. First, I think for Africa, where 4 women stand as presidential candidates, but we hardly see them featuring. I think Joyce Mujuru should have been featured more here. I hardly saw any posters for Joyce Mujuru. Patriarchy is still very dominant here. This is an election that required money, I think. If we just look at the T-shirts, the caps, the cars, the big posters, would they have had access to that kind of funding as well? For the General Assembly, though, there are 60 votes that are usually kept, I think, for proportional representation. So we will get 30% of women at least coming in, because I think they keep those particular votes for women.
All right, so then there's the MDC coupe factor, which seems this time around was like in previous elections, the MDC splits at a critical moment and then that hands victories to ZANU-PF.
I'm not too up to date with the MDC coupe factor, but the MDC Alliance has just been put together very recently. So they will have to maintain their cohesion going through this election and post that election. We know that this is a party, and ZANU-PF has fractured also over the last few years, that is prone to this kind of factionalism. Let's hope that this does not occur now, that they can maintain the cohesion.
So what happens next? The General Assembly is announced, the president wins, and then they've got a big job on their hands.
So no matter who comes in as president, they face very similar challenges in Zimbabwe. Major challenges around the economy that needs to be transformed, around infrastructure, around financing in this place, health and education. They need investor confidence, they need to build trust, national reconciliation needs to take place here as well. So they both, whether it is Emmerson Mnangagwa or Nelson Chamisa, will face those challenges.
Okay, Cheryl, thanks very much indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, all right. That was Cheryl Hendricks, who's the Executive Director of the Africa Institute of South Africa, sharing her insights and her thoughts about this election that's been 48 hours ago at this time. Well, we saw a number of people going to the polls to vote, and now we're waiting to see what their choice has been. We're going to continue giving you rolling coverage from the results center and also on the streets of Harare to get a sense of how people are reacting to the results that are coming through. A little bit later on, we'll also get news from the Observer Mission. They're having a press conference this afternoon. We'll bring you that live as well. And we'll bring you all the results as they're announced. So still lots to come from here in Harare. In the meantime, we go back to you in the studio.